Hi, I'm Margaret Evans. Over the next half hour, we're going to take a look at what life is like for Palestinians living in the Israeli-occupied West Bank since Israel began its war against Hamas in Gaza in October 2023. First up, the increasingly aggressive tactics being used by Jewish hardline settlers to push Palestinians from the land.
Give me passport, please.
I'd really like to see your ID saying you're a soldier.
This is not the law in Israel. Give me passport.
These are the foot soldiers of Israel's settlement enterprise in the occupied West Bank at work.
You know everything here. Give me, please. Here,
do not touch me.
Hey! They're now actually putting handcuffs on him. Their tactics are increasingly hard-line, say the Palestinians enduring them. I want to keep my eye on him. The Palestinian village of Tuwani lies south of Hebron, a small farming community that, like most of the West Bank, is under complete Israeli control. Shaped by the land and circumstance, 20-year-old Mohammed Horeini has taken to fighting the occupation through social media.
Every week there is a home demolition in Masafir Yatta. Meanwhile, in my back, there the settlements have the right to exist, while according to the national law are illegal.
Horeini was born and raised in these hills in the shadow of an Israeli settlement called Ma'on and its outpost, Havot Ma'on.
And yeah, as you see, they have just established this military tower which for watching our land after October 7th. And if they saw us here, they will come.
And they did come, just after the interview. Armed men in military fatigues, unable or unwilling to formally identify themselves. Ma'on and its outpost are notorious for the extremist settlers who live there. Palestinian children walking by on their way to school have had to have an Israeli army escort to protect them from attack for nearly 2 decades. Horeini says Tuwani's residents are used to harassment, but since the deadly Hamas attack on October 7th last year, violence by extremist settlers against Palestinians has spiked. This video shows an encounter between an armed settler and Palestinian residents of Tuwani in the same month. Horeini's cousin, Zachariah Adra, was shot in the stomach, an armed person in military fatigues looking on. Adra survived, but his attacker was never charged.
Everything happens in a moment, and maybe it will cost you your life.
The land in the South Hebron hills can shift in and out of focus when the sand slips loose from the hard desert floor, a little like the dream of a Palestinian state. Since Israel captured East Jerusalem and the West Bank from Jordan in 1967, successive governments have allowed settlements to expand and flourish on Palestinian land. Today, there are 500,000 Jewish settlers in the West Bank alone, many in large settlement blocks, others in smaller remote ones, some for economic reasons, some because they believe the land is theirs by divine right. Horeini is taking us to a village called Zanuta, its Palestinian residents having just returned for the first time in almost a year since fleeing in the weeks after October 7th, threatened, they say, by settlers at a nearby outpost.
Yes, go. Yeah, this is after the people were forcibly displaced. The settlers came here, they start to draw. They put lots of Israeli flags and destroyed most of the houses. They destroyed.
The school, built with European Union funding, is in ruins. A few childhood memories clinging to the walls that still stand.
You can see there's a settlement outpost that's close to the village.
The outpost in question is called the Metarim Farm, established by a man named Enon Levy, one of 11 extremist settlers sanctioned by Canada, accused of perpetrating violence against Palestinians. Hello, marhaba. We find the men of the village trying to clear up. They say it's still not fit for women or small children. Okay. Shafiq Suleiman, born here 52 years ago, he tells us, shows us his house, now without a roof. The farmers and herders who live here only returned after an Israeli Supreme Court decision said they could. But they've come with solidarity activists from Israel and abroad for added security. And they're not allowed to rebuild their homes destroyed in their absence because the area has been dubbed an archaeological zone. The residents show us video they say is of Levy and others harassing them as soon as they returned, driving quads through their herds. You're always afraid, says Suleiman. If you'd come an hour ago, you would have seen settlers here. Calling the Israeli police or army, they say, is pointless. Shepherd Hassan Batat tells us he was arrested a day earlier after one of Levy's men accused him of stealing a sheep. When the police came, he says, they took a sheep out of his flock and issued him with a fine of nearly $400. Israeli settlements are considered illegal under international law. Obviously, Israel disputes that. But even Israel considers settlement outposts like the one behind me illegal, at least technically. Most Palestinians will tell you the Israeli government is actually encouraging them and will one day support them with electricity, water, even their own access roads. Rights groups say it's an old pattern, but one that's accelerated dramatically since Israel's far-right government came to power 2 years ago, with pro-settler cabinet ministers describing settlements as facts on the ground that will thwart any possibility of a Palestinian state. Nearly 70 outposts have been greenlit for government funding over the past year, according to settlement watch groups, and 43 new outposts have been established. Part of the settlers' strategy with the outposts is to start on one hilltop and then take another hilltop nearby and then another, and that way they're linking the territory in between and expanding the territory they control. We returned to Zanuta a week later, only to find it deserted, save for the mayor of the village council.
Unfortunately, the settlers still attack us.
Fayez Tella says October 7th and the war in Gaza that followed has given cover to those in Israel determined to annex the whole of the West Bank.
The settlers have an permission to do anything, to do all kinds of the violence. But I'm not with what happened in 7 October.
We decided to try and speak to Enon Levy.
אנחנו פה מהטלוויזיה הקנדית CBC.
אני לא אוהב את הדברים האלה, לא אוהב את המצלמות והדברים האלה, אני יכול בטלפון בשמחה בערב.
He's happy to do it on the phone in the evening,
on the phone,
around 6-7.
But not in person.
Yeah.
Because we're very near right now. Does he know that?
כן,
He says he's not there. When we call him later at the appointed time, he tells us to call back in an hour, and when we do, he stops answering his phone.
Looks like he hung up on us.
An occupation now in its 57th year has never been a stagnant thing. But the lines between the Israeli army and militant Jewish settlers are increasingly blurred. The encounter between our crew and the armed men who arrived from behind settlement walls to demand our passports is a mild example.
Your passport? Well, you're not answering my question. How do we know that you're a soldier?
You not need. Hey.
In the end, they arrested our Palestinian-Israeli colleague, falsely accusing him of assault. They then put him in the car and have driven him towards this settlement or the outpost that you can see just in the distance. He was eventually released, but ordered to appear at a police station the next day.
Go there.
Later, the Israel Defense Forces told us the man demanding passports was an army reservist. Asked about the IDF relationship with settlements and outposts, they said the IDF trains and equips what it called local community defense forces. Critics say they're militia-like, often made up of hardline settlers volunteering as reservists to replace Israeli troops normally stationed in the West Bank, now fighting in Gaza or Lebanon. Mohammed Houreini's chosen path, he says, is one of activism, non-violent resistance to the theft of Palestinian land. The teachings, he says, of his father. And what do you think about the sanctions that some countries, including my own, put on individual settlers? Is that helpful?
Did you see any change after all of this? Did you see settlers stop their crimes against the Palestinians? No.
If anything, he says, they're emboldened. What happened to his cousin has shaken him. That's the point, he says.
To scare you, to intimidate you, and put an end for what we are doing, for fighting for our liberation, for our rights, for our land.
A part of Houreini's routine now is to make sure his father is rarely alone when grazing their animals. The settlers and their guards watching in the distance, one more constraint on an already restricted horizon. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have also been displaced by Israeli military raids taking place in villages and towns across the West Bank, especially in the decades-old refugee camps of cities like Jenin in the north. An evisceration. This is the Israeli military at work in the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Out of sight, save for glimpses of the mechanical excavators scraping out the innards. The Israeli military, or IDF, says it is destroying Palestinian terrorist networks and infrastructure that have burrowed into the camp's narrow streets for decades. Residents say there are no more militants left. This was what the Defense Minister Israel Katz had to say.
The Jenin refugee camp will not return to what it was. The IDF forces will remain in the camp to make sure that terrorism does not return.
Palestinians say the occupation's imprint is deepening even further, with hundreds of barriers or checkpoints now stretching across the occupied territories. Dr. Dalal Irakat teaches international diplomacy in Ramallah.
Students don't reach their classrooms. Doctors don't reach the hospitals to give treatments to patients, let alone the patients who die on checkpoints waiting for 3 or 4 hours. So this policy of segregation, this policy of suffocation, of apartheid is documented in 2025.
Especially new, the arrival of iron barricades like this one in the village of Sinjil, north of Ramallah. Residents afraid to speak to us on camera for fear of repercussions by Israeli soldiers.
They want to choke us. They've taken authority on all the lands. Sinjil's lands are all gone.
Much of the international community, including Canada, back the idea of an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. But the current Israeli government has pledged to make sure that never happens. Welcome to the funeral and to the desert lands east of Jerusalem that will serve as a burial ground for the faded dream of a Palestinian state. That's what Israel says it will do, bury it beneath thousands of new housing units slated for more Jewish settlers on illegally occupied Palestinian land. It's called E1, a patch of 12 square kilometers between Jerusalem and a settlement called Male Adumim. And many Palestinians fear Israel is right. that it will be a final nail in the coffin. The party marking the end of summer in Ma'ale Adumim, one of the largest Israeli settlements in the West Bank. The mayor, Guy Yifrak, gets a rock star greeting, making time for a Facebook Live and a shout out for E1, which will become part of the settlement. Yifrak was beside the hardline Israeli cabinet minister Bezalel Smotrich when he announced building will go ahead and delivered his pledge to thwart a Palestinian state. Ma'ale Adumim rises out of the desert like a fortress, imposing itself on the horizon. The mayor says they've been waiting to build an E1 for 30 years, that the settlement needs more room for growing Israeli families.
I think it's correct that at a strategic level, Ma'ale Adumim be connected to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is our capital city.
The Palestinians say building an E1 will sever their physical connection to Jerusalem and split the West Bank in two, making a contiguous Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital impossible. Yifrak isn't bothered.
I say openly I don't want a Palestinian state. Still, I think that building an E1 is not what will prevent it, because I know the area, and I know from living here that Palestinians have excellent movement from south to north.
Israel severely restricts Palestinian movement, it says, for security reasons, with more than 800 barriers, from military checkpoints to metal gates that can lock Palestinians in or out of their own towns. Maruf El-Rafai is with the Palestinian Authority, an advisor on Jerusalem.
All these shops also have orders for demolition.
He's on his way to visit Palestinians afraid they're about to lose their livelihoods or their homes to E1.
We lose everything. We lose our jobs. We lose our homes. We are losing our land. We are losing everything.
They live in Al-Azariya, a Palestinian town next to Ma'ale Adumim and the E1 area due to be developed. Dozens of small businesses here have been issued with demolition orders by the Israeli military, leaving people both angry and afraid. Anna Samir is one of the few willing to speak to us on camera.
Nobody cares about us. Nobody asking about us.
They've already begun clearing their shelves.
I don't believe anybody can stop this. Actually, nobody. Only the God, He can help us.
Now we are going to Jabal al-Baba.
Al-Rifai's sense of frustration and helplessness isn't far from the surface.
I'm going with you, and I know we cannot make any difference. This very sad to say.
Jabal al-Baba is home to about 80 Bedouin families, more than 400 people, along with the animals they keep. It's an outcrop of land next to Al-Azariya and across the valley from Ma'ale Adumim. Community leader Atala Al-Jahalan has a quiet presence. His life is perched on a precipice. He tells Al-Rafai they've also been told they've got to leave. We sat down with him later.
Israelis don't want Palestinians here in the land. You want in the land in Palestine, but no one see people Palestinian here. It's, you want to transfer in the Palestinian.
All across the West Bank, Palestinians say Gaza first. A way of making clear their own problems can't possibly compare. But while the world watches the destruction of Gaza, Israel's de facto annexation of the West Bank has gone into overdrive.
It's an onslaught on everything that is Palestinian or could give us a viable Palestinian state.
Lawyer Hiba Husseini was part of the Palestinian negotiating team during the 1990s Oslo peace process, before it broke down. Back then, there were an estimated 115,000 Israeli settlers living in the West Bank. Today, there are more than 500,000, and that doesn't include those in East Jerusalem. Husseini says the resurrection of E1, blocked by the international community for decades, could indeed be a fatal blow for Palestinian statehood.
Already, the West Bank is divided into separate cantons, if you will, by virtue of the checkpoints and the military checkpoints.
She also says it shouldn't overshadow what else is happening in the West Bank, like recent Israeli military operations, displacing tens of thousands of Palestinians from decades-old refugee camps like those in Jenin and Tulkarem.
It's a quiet tsunami happening in the West Bank, moving people slowly away from their homes, their livelihood. And then the Jordan Valley. I mean, the armed settlers that have full protection by the Israeli military.
Violence against Palestinians by ultra-nationalist Jewish settlers who say the land is theirs by God-given right has increased dramatically since October 2023, along with the number of outposts that can serve as precursors to permanent settlements.
Hi. We are a TV crew from Canada.
They begin as small camps, usually manned by young men to be approached with caution. Our crew was quickly turned around when we tried.
They just said go.
We left without a fight, but they followed us.
Why are you following us?
A clear attempt to intimidate, especially our videographer.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch me either. I don't know if we should just hit the road. You see settler outposts everywhere across the West Bank these days. We're trying to go down to the Jordan Valley.
The Jordan Valley is part of the Fertile Crescent, and so a valuable agricultural asset for any future Palestinian state. The city of Jericho lies at the southern end, one of the oldest cities in the world and one of the hottest. Fans working overtime here to keep new calves cool at a dairy farm run by the Arab Development Society. It dates back to the 1940s, a gift from Arab governments to help Palestinians improve farming techniques. Its biggest operation is the dairy, with 200 milking cows. They pasteurize and package on site milk, yogurt, labneh, and deliver it, not just in Jericho, but to clients from Ramallah to Hebron. But there are fears the E1 development will change that. Hassan Al-Ashkar is an agricultural development expert with the Palestinian Authority.
It will put a block on all eastern slopes and Jordan Valley, and we will have to use alternative roads to reach our main cities.
Making them less competitive. One more constraint, he says, on farming communities already choked by the occupation.
Without accessing the import market or export market, we will not be able to develop.
This is a Palestinian neighborhood near Jerusalem, severed years ago by what Israelis call a security barrier and Palestinians an apartheid wall.
You see this one?
We've come to see Khalil Tufakci, an expert on Israeli settlements, who says even without E1, the viability of a Palestinian state is in doubt. That's despite the lip service countries like Canada have paid to it over the years.
They recognize Palestinian, but if you go to the field, You can't, there is no state.
So if I asked you, is there a point in Canada recognizing Palestine, what is your answer?
The point, now it's very late, but something is better than nothing.
On the other side of the wall, in Ramallah, Hiba Husseini agrees.
Not only do we appreciate it after such a long time, but it also demonstrates a shift in policy, in the treatment of the Israel-Palestine conflict.
But both say the gesture must move beyond symbolism and fast, with enough pressure on Israel to convince it to change course. Because the sun is setting and the gravediggers began their work long ago.
This has been a CBC News special. Thanks so much for watching.